Your room, it's mine now. I sold all your stuff, haha,
she declared with a smirk. My sister-in-law, always having had it out for me, stood there, reveling in what she believed was her victory. This woman, my husband's sister, had been a source of constant irritation for me. But never had I imagined that upon my return from a trip to my hometown for childbirth, I'd be metaphorically kicked out of my own home. But what good would it do to lash out at her now? I found myself struggling to suppress a smile. Well, do as you please, ha, I said, barely keeping the grin off my face. She mistook my response for bravado and burst into a loud, mocking laughter.
Thought having a baby would make you and my brother closer, huh? As if. I made sure to leak to him that the baby isn't his, that it's from some other man.
Her words were cruel and calculated.
Now you'll not only lose your marriage, but you'll also have to pay for your infidelity and leave this house. How pathetic, ha. Wonder whose child it is, but do everyone a favor and just disappear with it, ha.
She continued her tirade, but her words were like water off a duck's back to me. Why? Because the child I bore is undeniably mine and my husband's. I couldn't imagine my husband ever believing her lies. As for her having any supporters, well, she was quite alone in that regard. She'd realized that soon enough, once I left, and she faced the stern reprimands of my husband and his parents. Not that I'd be around to see that play out, though. Let me introduce myself. I'm Olivia, a 29-year-old woman embarking on the journey of motherhood. Currently, I'm pregnant and have chosen to embrace the full-time role of a housewife, leaving my job behind to focus on the upcoming challenges and joys of parenting. My husband, Logan, and we have a little nest of our own, a cozy suburban house where we build our dreams together. Our story goes back to our high school days. We were classmates, sharing not just the classroom, but also a bond that seemed to hint at something deeper. Life took us on different paths, only to reunite us as adults. Fate played its part when our respective companies, caught in the web of corporate dealings, brought us face to face in a business meeting. There, amidst the formalities and handshakes, I saw him, Logan, a familiar face from a past chapter of my life. My heart skipped a beat, and I remember standing there, rooted to the spot in surprise. Logan too shared the sentiment. After the meeting, we found ourselves gravitating towards each other, deciding to catch up over drinks, leaving the professional world behind for a moment. That's when I learned about Logan's choice to work locally. I still vividly recall our high school days when Logan spoke passionately about spreading his wings far from our hometown. So, seeing him take a job in a local company piqued my curiosity. I couldn't help but ask, Logan, didn't you once dream of working far away from here? His response came with a gentle, somewhat resigned chuckle.
Well, my family had other ideas. They really didn't like the thought of me being away. Wanted to keep the family close, so here I am,
he explained. His words resonated with me. Deep down, I always harbored a desire to stay close to my family roots, to maintain those precious bonds. So choosing to work locally was a path I empathized with. However, for Logan, this decision was heavily influenced by his family dynamics, particularly the strong opinions of his sister, a factor that I believe significantly shaped his choices. I was unaware at the time, but Logan's sister, Isabella, had always been very attached to her brother. She became incredibly upset when she learned that Logan was planning to leave their hometown. My first encounter with Isabella happened shortly after Logan and I began dating. It was during our second date. She arrived at our meeting place earlier than planned and immediately began sizing me up with a scrutinizing look.
So, you're my brother's new girlfriend? You're not particularly cute, more like below average,
she said bluntly. Confused, I asked, "Excuse me, who might you be?" With a sigh of exasperation, she replied,
"Can't you tell from what I said? I'm Isabella, Logan's sister. Not only do you lack looks, but brains too. Please break up with my brother immediately."
Isabella, evidently an adult, left me even more perplexed. The idea of an adult coming to her brother's date to demand his girlfriend to break up was beyond belief for me. Logan arrived in a rush, his expression one of surprise and concern, as he blurted out,
"What? Isabella, what are you doing here?"
Standing there with an air of defiance, Isabella nonchalantly responded,
"It was easy to find out where you were meeting. A quick peek at your phone and I knew everything, even about your new girlfriend."
Logan's face contorted in annoyance.
You've been snooping through my phone. That's invasive and creepy, and you need to stop interfering in my social life. You have no idea how many friendships you've ruined because of your meddling.
He continued with a stern warning.
This needs to stop now. If you keep this up, I'll have no choice but to discuss this with our parents.
With that, Logan firmly grasped my hand, decisively moving us away from Isabella. This encounter made it abundantly clear that such behavior from Isabella was not uncommon. It also shed light on the extent of Logan's distress due to her actions. Apologizing, Logan confided in me.
I'm sorry you had to see that, Olivia. That was my sister, Isabella. When we were kids, our parents were often busy, so I ended up being responsible for her a lot.
He explained further.
She became excessively attached to me, and now she feels entitled to meddle in my relationships.
There was a weariness in Logan's voice, a clear sign of the emotional toll Isabella's behavior had taken on him. The fact that she would go to the extent of showing up at his date and demand his girlfriend to leave was beyond normal, a glaring indication of the unusual dynamics within their family. Logan looked at me with a mix of worry and hope in his eyes.
I know having a sister like Isabella can be challenging, and it might bring some troubles in our relationship.
He admitted.
But I'm serious about us, Olivia. I see a future together, perhaps even marriage.
His voice was earnest, filled with a longing for understanding.
I promise to handle the situation with my sister. Please, don't give up on me because of her.
He pleaded, his eyes mirroring the vulnerability of a lost puppy. In that moment, my heart swelled with affection for him. The idea of abandoning Logan over his sister's intense nature was unthinkable. Apart from Isabella's overpowering personality, there wasn't a single fault I could find in Logan. More than anything, my love for him was steadfast, and pushing him away was out of the question. Despite further meddling from Isabella, Logan consistently stood as my protector, shielding me from any real harm. We took significant steps forward, meeting each other's parents and introducing Logan to mine, eventually leading us to the decision to marry. Even with his stable job, Logan had never ventured far from his childhood home. Our marriage marked a new chapter, prompting him to finally move out. In the past, any attempt he made to leave was met with Isabella's dramatic protest, declaring,
Absolutely not. If my brother's going to live alone, I'm going with him.
However, the reality of marriage brought a new perspective, making it clear that continuing to live at his parents' home wasn't an option anymore. Logan's parents had strongly suggested he move out, a decision that Isabella, despite her usually assertive nature, couldn't defy. Consequently, Logan and I embarked on our new life together as a married couple, leaving behind the familial home. Our first year of marriage flew by, and soon we were thrilled to discover that I was pregnant. We waited until the pregnancy was stable before sharing our joyous news with our parents. Visiting Logan's parents to announce the pregnancy, they were ecstatic at the idea of becoming grandparents. It's understandable. The birth of a grandchild is always a cause for celebration. However, Isabella's reaction was quite the opposite. She appeared briefly, her face contorted with displeasure.
My brother having a child? That's just ridiculous.
She scoffed, quickly disappearing back into her room. Her words left us perplexed. After all, Logan and I were married, and having a child seemed like a natural progression in our lives. At that moment, neither of us could fathom what Isabella was trying to express, but the answer would soon become apparent, albeit still bewildering. Following our announcement, Isabella began to frequently visit our home, something we hadn't anticipated. We had deliberately kept our address hidden from Logan's parents to prevent such unexpected intrusions. Yet, against all odds, Isabella had uncovered where we lived, and her unannounced appearances became a regular occurrence, adding an unforeseen twist to our otherwise peaceful domestic life. Isabella had a habit of showing up at our house when she thought Logan was at work, persistently ringing the doorbell until I would answer. Knowing her tendency to intrude unexpectedly, I was apprehensive about what might happen if I opened the door. To avoid any confrontation, I chose to pretend not to be home until Logan returned. Isabella, realizing Logan's arrival was imminent, would quickly leave to avoid being seen. When I told Logan about Isabella's visits, he looked troubled.
Isabella came here, but how did she find us? I never shared our address. Maybe she followed us after our last visit to the parental home.
He guessed. That seemed the only logical explanation since Logan's parents were well aware of Isabella's nature and wouldn't have revealed our location. We hadn't even told them where we lived. Sighing heavily, I felt Logan's comforting hand on my shoulder.
Isabella might be trying to stress you out.
He said, his voice tinged with concern.
The ongoing stress isn't good for you or the baby. Perhaps it's time to consider staying with your parents for the birth.
The idea of returning to my parents' home, not too far away, for a temporary stay seemed more and more appealing. It would be a welcome break from the constant stress and a chance to relax in the familiar comfort of my childhood home. Agreeing with Logan's suggestion, I decided to stay with my parents for a while, seeking a peaceful environment for the remainder of my pregnancy. As I was preparing to leave for my parents' house for childbirth, Isabella arrived, coinciding perfectly with my departure. She watched me loading my bags into my father's car and approached with a look of glee.
What's this? Are you divorcing Logan? You're taking your stuff away, so you must be moving out, right?
She asked, barely containing her excitement. I looked at her unchanged behavior and replied, "No, I'm not divorcing. I'm just going to my parents for childbirth. And please, don't bother coming there. My parents will definitely turn you away if you try anything." My response seemed to infuriate her, her face flushing with anger.
What's that supposed to mean? I'm my brother's dearest sister. Are you saying it's okay to just ignore me?
The notion of her being ignored was absurd, especially since Logan himself had suggested this temporary arrangement. However, I kept my thoughts to myself. In an instant, her anger shifted to a sly smirk.
Well, it's as good as if you and Logan are divorced now.
She snickered.
Enjoy your relaxed stay at your parents' with your baby bump. When you return, you might find there's no place for you anymore.
Her smirk was unsettling, but I chose to ignore her insinuations and climbed into my father's car, determined to find solace and peace at my childhood home. I had been talking to my father, John, about Logan's sister, Isabella, for some time. When John saw Isabella up close for the first time, he was shocked by her rude behavior. He couldn't help but express his surprise, saying,
"What's with that disrespectful woman? I never imagined Logan's sister could be so rude."
As I and Logan had predicted, Isabella did not storm into my family home while I was away for a childbirth visit. This allowed me to give birth to my child with peace of mind, without any unwelcome interruptions from Isabella. However, during that time, Isabella had been making unannounced visits to Logan's house, bombarding him with nonsensical talk. After giving birth, I and Logan decided to briefly return to the house they shared to check on things. To their surprise, they encountered Isabella coming out of the house. Isabella, with a smug smile on her face, told me,
I've taken over your room. And by the way, I sold all your stuff.
I had anticipated some sort of action from Isabella, but I never expected to be virtually kicked out of her house right after returning from her childbirth visit. However, Isabella's actions did not cause me any harm. I struggled to suppress a smile as she grappled with her emotions. Covering my mouth, I managed to say, "Well, do as you please," in a tone laced with restraint. This response seemed to convince her sister-in-law, Isabella, that I was merely putting on a brave front. Isabella burst into raucous laughter, mocking my situation.
So you thought having a baby would make things better with your husband, huh? As if that would ever happen.
Isabella taunted.
I made sure to leak to my brother that you've been unfaithful, telling him the child isn't his.
She continued with a sneer.
Now, not only will you lose your marriage, but you'll also have to pay for your infidelity and leave this house. How miserable you must feel. I don't know whose child you're carrying, but you and your baby can just disappear,
Isabella declared mercilessly. However, I was secretly amused inside. In reality, I had already been informed by Logan himself about Isabella's numerous insinuations.
Sis, Isabella has been saying that you're cheating on me. She's been telling me that the baby isn't mine.
Logan had confided to me.
She thinks I'm naive about love and that you've been deceiving me.
He had revealed. I couldn't fathom how Isabella had concocted such baseless accusations of infidelity. I wondered what could possibly lead Isabella to believe such outrageous lies about me. Even during my pregnancy, I spent most of my time at home, and Logan willingly took over the shopping duties. Whenever I did leave the house, it was always with Logan. It seemed implausible that I would have any opportunity to be unfaithful. Logan himself was convinced of my fidelity, and I felt secure in his trust. Despite this, Logan's sister Isabella stubbornly insisted that I was having an affair. I wondered if Isabella believed that Logan, her brother, would take her word unquestioningly. It was a mistake to think that being a younger sister meant unconditional love and trust from a brother. In light of recent events, Logan had begun to reconsider his relationship with Isabella. I agreed that it might be for the best. Further involvement with Isabella could potentially harm not only me, but also me and Logan's child. Therefore, I and Logan decided to take proactive steps before Isabella could act on her plans. Just so you know, I moved my belongings out of this house a long time ago, I said calmly. Isabella looked surprised and asked,
What? Aren't those your things?
I responded composedly. Who exactly did you sell the belongings of? Isabella, flustered, replied,
Wait, I only sold the women's clothes and accessories that were in the house. What else could be here if not yours?
I suggested, perhaps you should ask the real owner of those items. I'm gonna head back home now. With that, I turned her back on Isabella and returned to her family home. Later, Logan informed her that Isabella had actually sold most of his mother's belongings and was now facing her wrath. I and Logan had been contemplating moving to escape Isabella's influence completely. However, they felt reluctant to let go of their house. At that point, Logan's parents proposed.
Our house is getting old and worn. Could you consider giving us your house?
After considering this, I and Logan decided to hand over their home to Logan's parents. The in-laws were exasperated by Isabella's antics and saw the move as an opportunity for Isabella to finally stand on her own defeat. They kept the move a secret from Isabella. After Logan's parents had moved their things out, Isabella discovered that they had a key to me and Logan's house. Seizing the opportunity, she sneaked into the house, thinking no one would find out. At that time, me and Logan's in-laws had moved their belongings into the house. Unaware, Isabella mistook these items for me and sold or discarded them.
I thought they were Olivia's things.
Isabella exclaimed in her defense. The in-laws were furious, admonishing her.
It doesn't matter whose belongings they are. You can't just sell or throw them away. How could you have been raised to act like this?
Isabella spent the entire night being severely reprimanded by the in-laws. The next day, a distraught Isabella contacted me, sending a selfie of her tear-streaked face and pleading,
This is all your fault. Tell Logan to take responsibility for me.
I, though exasperated, asked Isabella a question that had been on her mind. Why did you think the child I had wasn't Logan's? Isabella responded promptly.
Well, having a baby means you must have done that, right? And my brother wouldn't do such indecent things.
I was astonished by Isabella's perception of her brother. While this conversation was happening, Logan, who was beside me, read Isabella's claim and groaned.
I always knew Isabella had unrealistic ideals about her brother, but I never imagined it would go this far.
I reflected. It's such a relief that we managed to move away from our hometown. Unbeknownst to Isabella, me and Logan had indeed moved far away. Logan had found a job in a distant place, and I had left her old job, planning to raise their child in a new environment and look for work after settling down. Their new address was a secret even from their in-laws and my parents, making it impossible for Isabella to find them. Even if she went to Logan's old workplace, they hadn't disclosed his new employment location, so there was no way for Isabella to track them down. Just when I thought they were finally safe, I received another message from Isabella. Since Logan had completely cut off all contact with Isabella, blocking her number, she had no choice but to reach out to me. Surprised by the sudden contact, Olivia was shocked by Isabella's outrageous demand.
Give me money. Because you took my brother away. I'm being sued for alimony.
I could only respond in disbelief. Intrigued, I asked Isabella what had happened, and it turns out she had switched jobs to my husband Logan's former company, trying to gather information about him. But she couldn't find anything about Logan's current whereabouts at her new workplace. During this time, a man who resembled Logan visited from the headquarters, and Isabella persistently pursued him. It ended up that the man was actually a married individual, and worse, he was the son-in-law of an influential executive at the headquarters. Because of her involvement with a married man, Isabella faced a lawsuit for damages and also incurred the wrath of the executive, leading to her resignation. Isabella then irrationally blamed me, saying,
If Olivia hadn't married my brother, I would never have gotten involved with a married man. So she should pay the alimony I'm being charged with?
I was astounded by her audacity. I firmly told her, I have nothing to do with this. It's your own doing. You should pay your own alimony. And with that, I blocked her contact. And surprisingly, Isabella wasn't satisfied. She even claimed in front of our in-laws that I should pay her alimony. She was told by my in-laws something like,
Enough is enough. If you continue to disgrace yourself any further, you'll be disowned.
and it seems she was cut off from them. This led to a confrontation, and our in-laws finally had enough, threatening to disown her if she continued to bring shame to the family. Currently, Isabella is alienated from all our relatives. She's working hard from dawn till dusk to pay off the alimony all by herself. As for Logan and me, we are blessed with our growing daughter, who brings joy to our lives every day. Logan is a wonderful father and has been, and I find fulfillment in managing our home and raising our daughter. We hope this happiness continues into the future.